Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder. And our topic this week is romance. Both the acts of romance, the feeling of romance, maintaining the romance in a relationship to keep it alive, and letting go of some of those romantic notions that the world is going to be a certain way that may be holding you back.
If you're listening to this series as a podcast, it's likely you'll receive this program just before Valentine's Day of 2009. But wherever you happen to be in time and space, these programs are relevant because we're talking about perpetual romance. We're talking about romance not as something we celebrate one day a year on a card holiday, but all the time, because we really believe that love and romance is much more than something that happens to you or that you fall into. It really requires some dedication and commitment.
It does. It means putting at the top of your mind the thought, how can I make their world more wonderful? It means having as a commitment to your life becoming an us more than a me and you. It's an effort to keep romance alive in a relationship. It's really the most work that a relationship needs. Sometimes, of course, it's really easy. Things like Valentine's Day holidays remind us to do something romantic, go out to a nice dinner, write that nice card. And obligatory, romance is wonderful. In fact, it's important. I'll tell you a story. When I first met my wife, which was in March, the first Valentine's Day we celebrated, Valentine's Day had never been a real big deal for me, and I never talked about it with her. So I got her the nice card, and I wrote her a little poem, and I did a nice little thing, but nothing big. And I could tell, she said thanks, but I could tell she just really it wasn't what she was hoping for, So I said, I asked her, I said, is this are you disappointed? I mean, were you looking for something more? And she said, yeah. And I said, tell you what, can I have a do-over? Can I do this over again? So we picked February 21st to celebrate our Valentine's Day, and I took her out to a nice candlelit restaurant, and I bought her the really nice jewelry. I did a really sweet, and I made a big deal out of the whole day for her. And since then, we've been celebrating Valentine's Day on the 21st instead of the 14th. Restaurants are a lot more available on that night.
It sounds like a pretty good idea. You should turn lemons into lemonade on that one.
I take lemons and squeeze them over lobster. I do really great things with lemons. So the obligatory romance, the doing the nice birthday, Valentine's Day thing is important. But the really cool thing is when you do romantic things for no reason at all. I mean, no time, no space, basically just out of nowhere deciding to do something really romantic. Or the other thing I think is so wonderful is when there's something romantic that you do continuously and continually, some ritual romantic thing you do in your relationship. I have to tell you, one of the most romantic things I've ever heard. A friend of mine told me this story about his father. They owned a cabin up in Mammoth, California, up in the snow, real high altitude, and they usually went as a summer cabin, but once in a while they went in the winter. And when they went in the winter, the husband, this was a couple at the time, probably in their 60s, the husband would go out to the outhouse and sit down on the toilet seat and warm it up for his wife so that when she had to go to the bathroom, it was like nice and warm for her. To me, that's a very romantic thing to do.
Brr. Makes me chilly just thinking about it. Yeah, a sacrifice we make for another person. The idea of lifting romance from a you or me to a you and me proposition is more than a decision that we make once, I think. We have to keep reminding ourselves because there's this brain chemistry thing that goes on when there is friction in a relationship. The brain or the mind or the body, however you see this innate intelligence, this hard wiring that we have, fight or flight response, survival mode, when there is some friction or adversity in a relationship, from the brain's point of view, that's an enemy. That's not your spouse. That's not your partner. And it's baffling, They say O.J. killed his wife because he loved her so much. I mean, if he didn't know her and didn't care about her. I mean, the crime of passion. I love you so much, I'm going to kill you. It's often hatred or angst or anger at somebody you love is a function of how much you love them. And that's a bizarre concept that I think we need to address right up front. It means that we have to recover. It means that we have to have a commitment in our relationship where both people promise to themselves as well as to each other that they're going to breathe and relax, take some responsibility for the feeling rather than projecting it on other people, which is what we tend to do when we're frightened, and lift whatever either orness, you or me, right or wrong, there can't be two winners here, into a you and me where, yeah, not only can there be, but there must be two winners in this situation. That's very different than elsewhere in the world. One day, I think if that trickled out to all of our conflicts in the world, that would be wonderful, but certainly if we can't do it with our spouses, how can we change the world in that way?
And part of the romance of a relationship is that it's a safe place to be, that you aren't worried about becoming the enemy. And again, the brain chemistry is very powerful because when you feel that friction, when you feel that angst, when you feel that energy, the immediate response, this amygdala shoots out energy, it shoots out adrenaline, and your immediate response is to either attack or run, fight or flight. Neither of which is a good thing to do with your spouse. Hitting and running are both really bad ideas. So the bottom line is, I said this, I think, in the last podcast, Bob Dylan's line, if I'd have thought about it, I never would have done it. If you have the ability to be able to take that one moment and not knee-jerk and not react, you can be romantic. I mean, the one thing that kills romance is like running away from somebody or punching them in the face metaphorically. It's like making them the bad guy. It's winning an argument. But Bill Cosby said it best: never win an argument with your wife, and if you do, apologize immediately. It's like, it's a bad idea to win because, as you were pointing out, it's got to be win-win or it's lose-lose. Two people are on the same team here. And if there's a winner and a loser, that can only happen with opposite teams. That can only happen with opponents. That can only happen with adversaries. It cannot happen with teammates. Two teammates on the same team, one of them can't win and the other lose. It cannot work that way. So the bottom line is, to keep romance alive, you have to stay on the same team. So it means you have to think before you do anything, especially in a marriage. Especially in a marriage. Before you put your foot in your mouth, before you make that stupid mistake that takes 1/4 of a second to do and 1/4 of a lifetime to get forgiven for, That's the key. To me, it's the vigilance. It's the vigilance of maintaining the fact that this person is my friend above all else. I could be mad at her, I could be upset, I could be frightened by her, but above all else, this person is my friend, and I could be nice to her, even if she's doing some things that irritate me, even if this one aspect of her really, I still, big picture here, if I'm stepping back, I see big picture here. This is my wife. I love her. And so I can still be romantic, even when, at the same time, part of me is irritated.
Yeah, I think we really need to be cognizant of the fact that two really big, important qualities of love are trust and respect. And if we think that we have one of three or two of three, well, we love each other, but no, I don't really trust or respect. I mean, you got to have all three, right? I think real love, capital L love, includes trust and respect, but that three-legged stool isn't going to work if we don't have all three legs in place. But the good news, let me piggyback on what you were just saying, Steve, because if we could do this, you're saying, of course, that's what we're all about, is making it a matter of when or as you learn to do this, because in this very program we're going to do an exercise to help you do that lifting. It's simple but not easy. It's not really heavy lifting that we're talking about, but it requires a level of awareness that is needed at a time when we're least likely to be aware. When we feel friction or conflict in a relationship, and as Steve described, we go into fight or flight, we get this amygdala choke, as it's called. It's actually fight or flight. There's also qualities of freeze or faint. You play dead. You don't know what to do. You get numb. You get confused. In other words, there's a trade-out. Not only do your muscles get tight and your blood pressure and your pulse go up and brain waves elevate and a number of other changes take place, but to get the strength and the endurance to either fight or run from this adversary, from this enemy, you have to lose something. And what you lose are the higher brain functions of being reasonable, being sensitive, being intuitive, and remembering, as Steve just indicated, wait a minute, this is a team. This is a marriage, or this is a quality relationship that we're working on, that we're committed to, that we're developing, where the self always gives way to the team and to the higher self that can remember in a crisis that we are an inseparable team.
Yes, and as we function more and more that way, then we stop, think before we act and say. And that's the bottom line. I mean, to me, romance exists in a relationship when you don't kill it, when you don't do things to stomp it into the ground. And what hurts romance in a relationship the most is not feeling safe with the other person. It's feeling like you're on the opposite sides, or your enemies, or your opponents. There's a problem, but it's us against the problem, not you against me. And yeah, there's lots of problems, but it's always us against the problem. And if there's that, then romance can stay alive. And you do things that are romantic. Now, the way you do romantic things is really important, because some things people do that some people feel are romantic, other people don't think are very romantic at all, and other things, it's the quality of what you do, but it's also understanding what's important to the other person. For example, I think most people would agree that the words "I love you" are romantic. What's the wonderful Paul Simon line? Some people never say the words "I love you." It's not their style to be so bold. Some people never say the words "I love you," but like a child, they're longing to be told. But to some people, those words make them go, I feel safe. Yes, I feel loved when I hear those. Other words, other times people say those words, and they go, wait a minute, what's he trying to do? Some people, the only way to get them to feel loved is to do nice things for them, not say things to them. They think talk is cheap, or words don't mean. You have to do nice things for them. So we all have our own ways of feeling loved and doing things that make us feel loved.
Steve, we've made reference in the past to the Chapman book on
wonderful book.
Styles of Loving. I think we should talk about it again. This is really a highly acclaimed book that describes, 5 basic styles of loving.
Yes, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. It's a wonderful book. 5 basic ways that you can share love, affection, appreciation with the person that you want to share it with. He has a book for spouses, a book for children. You can share 5 love languages with lots of people. Here are the basic ideas. There's 5 different languages. One of them is words, words of love, words of gratitude, words of appreciation. The second is acts of service, doing something nice for a person that they haven't asked you to do, thinking about them and what can I do to make their life more wonderful or easier. The third is gifts, not the obligatory birthday or Valentine's Day gifts, but gifts for no reason kind of gifts. The next is quality time, not quantity of time, but actually being together, spending time, doing the same thing together, quality time. And finally, touch, being the one to reach out to hold the other person's hand, the physical affection part, the sex, the cuddling, all that kind of stuff. So words, acts of service, gifts, quality time, and touch.
Steve and I were talking about this a few days ago, and I said, well, we should have a mnemonic for that. Steve said, I don't need a mnemonic for 5 things. I said, well, I do. So we we came up with one. This is the order that Chapman uses, right?
Well, he has several books, so that's the way I remembered them.
Imagine petting your dog or another friendly dog, and, of course, the tail wags. So the mnemonic is wag the tail, wag TT, okay? And you can visualize this. Anytime you want to remember styles of loving, think about the way the dog wags its tail and loves you when you pet it. Wag TT is our mnemonic then.
Words, acts, gifts, time, and touch.
There you go. Words, again, like Steve said, you might think that everybody loves words. Well, everybody appreciates all 5 of these, but we're talking about the priority here. So you've got to learn to read your partner, and it would be nice if first you understood your own WAG profile here as well. Okay. Words, wonderful, but some people think talk is cheap, so that doesn't have nearly as much meaning as acts of service or gifts or just taking the time or touching. So that's an easy way for you to remember it. WAG TT, sort of like every good boy deserves fudge on the musical scale. Think of WAG TT.
What was the one you told me about the Great Lake? House, the Great Lakes. Holmes, that's right.
Right. Holmes, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. It's an easy way to remember. Mnemonics are really cool. Check out our family learning hour from a couple of weeks back, and you'll find a whole lesson on memory and how to stimulate memory, improve your memory. And mnemonic devices are very cool. So WAG TT, okay? These are the 5 ways that you like to be loved and prioritize them. Come in touch with what really works for you. And then you'll have some experience to empathize with your partner and see what is their WAG profile. Is it words? Is it acts of service, your behavior, what you do? Is it gifts? Is it granting time and attention? Or is it touch? And of course, all of those matter, but in what order, so that you can prioritize and be ever more effective in your giving in relationship.
So when you give something to someone that makes them feel loved, that's really romance. Giving something to someone that you think it'd be nice to get, but isn't really, rocking their boat, that's not really romantic. You're trying to be romantic. I think there's a whole lot of gestures where you attempt to be romantic, but it doesn't come off because, again, you're speaking the wrong language. Saying I love you to someone, first of all, the tone of voice, the situation, if you only do it while you're making love, there's lots of factors involved in that. And some people, as you said, think talk is cheap. Acts of service, some people...
I'll give you an example. People even say this in a sarcastic way. Love you. Mean it.
Yeah, bye.
Evidence that you don't. You're just saying, well, so we have qualities of love. So it is important that you read the other person, but you sort of got to know yourself first to be able to empathize with another.
Indeed. So sometimes, reading the other person allows you to be romantic. I know, for example, with my wife, the touch is really important to her. So what that means is that if we're walking down the street and she holds my hand, that's cool. But if we're walking down the street and I reach out and hold her hand, that makes her feel loved. It's like she feels loved when she feels like this magnet that draws me to touch her, and she feels like this love being that I want to go hold and a cuddle and kiss that makes her feel loved. It makes her feel lovable, and that's real important to her. Gifts are less important to her. If she wants something, she usually goes and buys it for herself. Not to say that the obligatory gifts aren't important, but what's most important to her are the acts of service and the touch. For me, I love the words. I've been a words person all my life, and I like gifts. She bought me this, for my birthday, this gift certificate to Amazon, and I have a wonderful time going online on Amazon, buying another book, saying, hey, baby, thank you for another birthday present. That's really romantic. A dozen times already I've said to her, hey, baby, thanks for another birthday present. And I keep thanking her for the gift that she's given me over and over again. It's more fun to go buy one book at a time and thank her that way than to buy a whole bunch of books and thank her once.
As we discuss romance and keeping romance alive in a marriage or other committed relationship, we have new terms now. Civil ceremony, a civil union, but not a marriage, whatever is the nature of your relationship. Another important part of this is realizing that it's really an opportunity to dissolve the self and go from you or me to you and me, a quality of us, where the me is replaced by the higher self we find in paradise. That's a message we keep bringing home to you, is that the self runs along a continuum from a very separated self, the ego, the personality, the what's in it for me part, largely fear-based, to a very love-based self. We capitalize it, capital S-E-L-F. We put it in all caps because this is a harmonious or unitive self. This is a self that replaces or with and, a synergy where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. In other words, romance and real romantic love and spiritual love as well has the ability to create a relationship that is even more than 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 = this eternal, infinite, and ever-expanding, wonderful thing that is more than either of us could ever have without the other.
Yeah, it's living in paradise together. It's I like to call it alpha à deux. The alpha brainwave state, the two people are living safe together. That this is the happiest place, the best place, the place we most want to be. And part of the romance for me is practicing being romantic. Literally, I close my eyes, I take a deep breath, I go to my alpha state, and I imagine my wife in front of me. She's not, right now, she's not here. But I imagine that she's in front of me, and I just love her. I just imagine all the wonderful things about her that I love, and so I just practice. I mentally rehearse, and so that when I'm with her, it's even more wonderful. It's like romance is as much a feeling state as it is an action or behavior state. It's feeling in love. It's feeling romantic. If I'm feeling those things, then the acts, the behaviors will be born out of that. I could just say, oh, I'm supposed to do romantic acts and go do them, but that's not the same thing as feeling the romance, kindling that energy of romance, and then born out of that feeling, the acts, the behaviors that I do, whether it's the way I touch her differently because I'm feeling all this oozy, neat stuff, or maybe it's the gift that she chooses to give me, the special thing that she chooses to give me because I've been so sweet and so nice lately to her, whatever it happens to be. To me, the acts can create the romantic feelings, but I think a way better way to approach it is to start with those romantic feelings and then let the acts be born out of those.
That's a really good and important point. We talk about throwing your heart over the fence and the horse follows. And this has been verified by 3 or 4 decades of sports psychology now. The winner's edge comes from feeling like a winner before the race rather than waiting for the outcome to see how you ought to feel about it. And leading with your emotions is a form of emotional intelligence. Sometimes we call it emotional management that we can use in relationship as well. It occurs to me that another aspect of this, Steve, is dealing with the codependence that we have and often call love, but really isn't very loving. It can actually be quite needy. Psychologists have talked for years and years and years about our need for attention, our need to be appreciated, and the tendency we have, said the other way, to feel taken advantage of or used. A lot of people have a greatly exaggerated need to define love as something we receive rather than something we give. The truth, I think, is that, and this merits a little pondering, that love is not a commodity like a bushel basket full of apples that I can give or receive. It's a magnetism between two people, and both have to be giving to receive. But it's not a separative, did you give or receive? It's a magnetic, I want to say the word tension, but a good kind of constructive tension that is maintained, where the giving and receiving are not separated, but the result of both giving. The idea that we want to harvest the seed and then we'll do some planting later on, that I want to receive love in my life and then, maybe I'll have some to give, is core codependence, and it's just never going to work in the long run.
And as long as it's me and you, or me or you instead of it, I mean, if it's we hurt me or she hurt me is a totally different experience. Us hurt me. Well, okay, us hurt me. Now that's a whole different thing. I have to take some responsibility in that.
We
right?
are hurting.
Yeah, so
we are
hurting. We are confused instead of she against me. She hurt me. So that's the whole. That's the transition. That's always it's this us thing that has to happen, and that's the consciousness. And again, the amygdala autopilot is set on survival. And the whole thing here is, even though your wife's not going to take a butcher knife to you, confusion gets confused with danger. And if we don't know what she's going to do or he's going to do, if we don't know what's going to happen, if we're all confused, then what we do is just to play it safe, we become the enemy. We put them on the other team, the other side, just to be, they might hurt me. So, and again, remember, we're descended from the most paranoid. It was in survival's interest to be, really paranoid about things that were confusing because they might be dangerous. Well, my wife's never, ever, ever, ever going to be dangerous to me. She has no threat to wound me or kill me at all. And so there's never a reason for me to move into a fight or flight mode with her. So the bottom line, even if I get really upset or really angry, there's no fight and flight are not the things I'm going to do. Neither are freeze and faint, for that matter. So what I need to be able to do is, especially vigilantly in my relationship, is to look before I leap, to check it out, feel it out, act it out, to take that one conscious deep breath, to be awake, to be aware, and to allow the romance to thrive by not doing anything to kill it. And what I do to kill it is to speak before thinking, is to act before considering, is to not take that one moment and remember, this is my friend. If I remember that before anything, if I remember that, and this is us, then I don't do those things that make romance so hard to keep alive.
This is one of the reasons that Steve and I talk about responsibility as your ability to choose the way in which you respond. Responsibility is not shifting blame from others doing something to you to self-blame. It's saying, well, here's the situation. Now I will choose the response. And responsibility for feelings means they're my feelings, that others stimulated them, but the response is inside me and reveals me. My hurt, my anger, my frustration, my sadness, my angst from this conflict or friction or just feeling, as I said before, used or unappreciated or taken advantage of. It's about the person feeling it, not about the person that made you feel that way. So the idea, I think, is to consciously remember this is not a win or lose situation. As Steve said before, we're on the same team. So we're playing in a game not against each other, but the game of life. And everybody's got to win, or everybody loses. To remember that is to become the higher self, the true self, the real you. And we're not only telling you this, we're going to show you how in just a few minutes.
And understand, of course, the idea that everybody has to win doesn't mean everybody has to get everything they want. In fact, I think one of the things that ruins the notion of romance is the concept of romantic notions. That is, we have this idea that, our romance is supposed to be like hearts and flowers and perfect and nice every day and no problems, and that we'll have this happily ever after. Happily ever after. That sounds like there's never going to be a problem again. It's all worked out now. I've got all my ducks in a row. The idea that we bring from childhood this romantic notion of the way marriage is supposed to be, just as powerful as in the previous episode we talked about bringing, I'm in trouble now, the idea of I'm in love and everything's wonderful and perfect. But we have this exaggerated idea from Prince Charming and Cinderella of what love is supposed to be, and we bring that and we look and compare our wives to the perfect idea that we have from childhood, the romantic notion of how our marriage is supposed to be, and therefore we don't behave romantically in it.
When there is conflict or adversity, some sort of problem or disagreement comes up in relationship, you can feel the magnetism. And if you feel pushed away, or you feel like pulling away, well, it's understandable. But feel it consciously and acknowledge that this is the wrong direction. This is the chemistry in the brain confusing your anxiety with real danger, right? I have the ability, sometimes it takes a little longer than at other times, but I can recover, I can breathe, I can relax, and remind myself this is a team. This is the most important team that I'll ever be on. My spouse may even be the parents of my children, if you have children in your family. But just the team of two, even if you didn't have children, that's the most important team. That's a team that you're putting ahead of your own self, your very individuality. Love is a bond that you first give to without concern about what you're going to get, because the self has supplanted its sense of being separated with the more harmonious or even unitive sense of commitment and determination and dedication and one for all and all for one, and we're in this together. And that means to take a breath and relax and deliberately move into, you got to shift the energy. Feel it right now. Think of a time when, as the result of some disagreement with a person that you love dearly, you felt them pulling away and you felt yourself pulling away. Imagine now recovering, remembering, wait a minute. This is just an autonomic, automatic fight-or-flight response. This is brain chemistry. Hold on. These are my feelings. I can manage them. Breathe, relax, and deliberately move into face the fear, face the confusion, come together. Remind your partner with words like, look, I'm really confused right now. I'm not sure what my feelings are saying about me or you, but I know if we pull apart that it's going to get worse. We've got to come together. We're in a relationship. And, well, like anything else, I guess it's easy to have faith when things are going really well. It's when times are difficult that it matters that we have faith. And in a relationship, the same thing. You know, when you're getting along and things are rosy and fun and it feels romantic, well, that's good. But the test of that is, what are you able to do to recover when you get rocked back on your heels and feel that pulling apart? My point is, you can actually feel in the body the pulling away of yourself and the other, and you can let go and reverse it and come together in spite of your initial response.
I mean, lifelong romance, keeping it alive forever, involves being nice even when you don't feel the feelings. It's just the behavior is always nice. There's never a reason for not nice behavior, because this is your self. This is part of what you are now. This is the us. I don't believe you have to give up yourself to have a relationship. What I do believe is you have to adapt and change and grow and work within. It's a lot of work,
to find the higher self.
Yeah, exactly. And so therefore, the what you get for being part of the us, the feeling of connectedness, the whatever that is worth whatever sacrifices it takes to do the behavioral changes, or to, that's what people decide. Is it worth it? Is being us worth it? And if you've said yes and you've decided it is, and it's real clear to you that I want this marriage to work, then I think the most important thing always is to be nice even when you don't feel like it. Just the key to keeping romance alive is to do nothing to kill it. And where you kill it is by not being nice. It's as simple as that. Just always be nice. At least that. You can be angry, you can be sad, you can be frustrated, you can be confused, but you can always be nice. Your behaviors can always be nice, even when you're feeling all those kinds of feelings.
We were talking just a few minutes ago about the wag the tail, about the 5 different ways of expressing our love, but let's acknowledge now that they're all forms of acknowledging love. And the best thing you can do in a romantic relationship, whenever there's some sort of conflict, is acknowledge that there's love in the relationship. As I said a few minutes ago, it could even be a statement like, well, I'm really confused right now. I'm feeling really angry. I'm really hurt. I'm really upset. But I've got a pretty good sense of how you feel, too. In fact, I'd be willing to listen if you wanted to talk about your feelings so I could acknowledge those back to you. And then if you could reverse the role and get what you just gave, that'd be nice. But what if you didn't even need that part? What if you just committed yourself to being always the best that you can be at finding some merit in the argument of your spouse that you can agree with? There's got to be some common ground. This is a person you married, who you love and romanced, and you've got these big plans. And there's got to be some common ground in every disagreement. There's got to be some little kernel of merit or truth that you could acknowledge, and that reestablishes the union, the harmony, the magnetic coming together now, and you're quite likely then to receive a similar acknowledgement. Now we have something to build on.
Yeah, and figure out ways of being romantic in your relationship. The behaviors aren't nearly as important as the feeling, but, find out what works. And, I tried rose petals a couple of times, and it was pretty cool. There's some touches that you can do that specifically work for your, partner, and figure some of those things out and do those special nice things, that special restaurant they like, or that special flower arrangement they like, or whatever it happens to be. Those things are cool, but to me, the very nature of romance is like wanting to do it. Not the doing it, but like if it's a continual constant wanting to be romantic, wanting to figure out ways. I mean, I've written lots and lots of poems to my wife, hundreds of them actually over the years, because that's just a way I can express myself. Even though words aren't the most important thing for her, she loves the poems, and it makes me feel romantic. And there's just a lot of nice things that she's done for me, and I mean, in so many different ways, in terms of just taking care of me, like creating things I want, even if I didn't ask for them, just giving me things that she knows I would want. So it's real important that you feel loving, you feel romantic, and then the behaviors will follow. It's when you start seeing from a different consciousness of a you versus me, kind of thing, instead of that that sweet loving, no matter what, it's us, and us is the best. If you come from that place, you'll take that deep breath before you say anything wrong, before you neglect, before you do anything that puts that kink in the joy and wonder of the romance of this relationship.
Now more than ever, we need these kinds of responses. And if you can do it in your primary romantic relationship, then it's easier to be kind and loving and understanding, to help your neighbor. This is a time where our sense of family needs to move down the block. Love your neighbor needs to extend around the world. We're all in a pickle. It's not just the American economy, it's the global economy. And it's not the Republicans versus the Democrats, the capitalists versus the communists, or the rich versus the poor. These are false dichotomies that are held out, often by well-intentioned but simple-minded people. These are simple-minded models. It's much more complex than that. We are entering an era of consciousness. The world is moving into an epoch or an era in which we're beginning to realize, many of us for the very first time, what we're capable of beyond inventing things with science and technology. What we're capable of as a species, as humanity itself. A single race of people on a single planet, 3 stones from the sun, to care for each other, to end extreme poverty in this world, to create a world where governments work with each other and are aware of the mutual benefits of multilateral agreements and such, is not a world where we have to have a one-world government. There are balance points. There is a blend in the middle where we can, in non-political ways, express our caring for each other and our desire to help each other. But the training ground is with your spouse and romantic love. How can we stop global war and the nuclear arms race if men and women still treat each other so poorly? And that's why we say changing the world begins with you. Changing the world begins with you changing yours. And even understanding your partner begins with you understanding yourself, your higher self, the real self you find in paradise.
So paradise is a place that you can go to anytime you close your eyes and take a deep breath. It's a kind of thinking you can engage in all the time, and it's some place you can live with another person as well. You can live alpha adu. You can live in paradise together. I think there was a great book about that called The Bible that talked about living in paradise together. Realistically or metaphorically, it's a great concept, being able to be in paradise with another human being. And so the secret is to not let the romance die. To me, pragmatically, the secret is don't do anything mean. Just be nice. If you be nice all the time, be very, very nice to, and that's the key. You do that regardless of what else you're feeling. If your behaviors are always nice, then at least the spark can stay alive. And then when nice things happen, they can, burst into flames. So don't let it die by being mean. Don't let it die by putting the person on the other team. Don't let it die by creating an enemy out of the person that you love the most, just because something they're doing or thinking or feeling or saying. You're on the same team.
I was talking with a friend the other day about Dale Carnegie, and he writes his classic book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It becomes the Dale Carnegie Institute follow-up books, classes, meetings, this whole industry. And what's the secret? Be nice to people.
That's it.
Care about them.
And
be interested in who they are.
And listen. That's it. The great gift is listen to people. And I think listening sometimes is the most romantic thing you can do. Not trying to solve their problems, not fixing things, not taking care of, just sitting down and saying, especially for those people to whom quality time is a real important factor, and words, sitting and listening to their words and then reflecting back and communicating in that way. So we're talking about one of the most romantic notions of all is really understanding what the other partner needs. So putting yourself in their shoes, imagining the world through their eyes is a good practice for creating romance. Let's do an audio journey and give them an opportunity to walk a mile in their partner's shoes. Take a deep breath. And if you don't have a partner, of course, you get to make one up. Close your eyes. And if this is the appropriate time for you, decide that I have the intention of allowing myself to relax, release, find that nice inner peace, and find myself in paradise.
Steve's right. Even if you're between relationships, or never had the kind of relationship you'd love to have, you can create the seeds of that relationship by imagining now. Your willingness to commit, how does that feel? To be in a loving, committed, romantic relationship, where the honeymoon never ends, but where there are problems. A loving, committed, enduring, romantic relationship where both people are committed to being better and better problem solvers rather than pursuing a fantasy that somehow the other person can take me to a place where there are no problems. Be better problem solvers, and the more problems you have, the closer you come. And when you disagree, and you feel the heat of friction, you breathe and relax. Come to this place of mind, paradise thinking. Meditate, contemplate. Relax and feel safe. Tell yourself you have choices, and lift the heat of conflict to light.
And allow yourself to feel the romance in your soul begin to expand. Feel it moving in your chest. Feel it moving into your solar plexus and up into your arms and neck. Feel the romance, the feeling of romance in your body begin to grow as you picture or imagine or conceptualize the relationship you have or want. And imagine that you are part of that us relationship. And because of that, you are always together, regardless of distance. There's always a connection that you feel. Imagine the feeling of being in the oneness where two become us. It feels safe. It feels fulfilled. It feels love. It feels safe. It feels right. Try it on. Wear it. Embrace it. Experience it. Express it, feeling loved, lovable, loving, and full of the feeling of romance. That yes, great things can continue to occur. That yes, joyous and wonderful things are almost for sure. Yes, there'll be some adversity. There'll be some times that are tough. We'll get through difficult things, times that are rough, but we'll do it together. And we'll do it with love. And whatever's in our way, we're going to rise above together. That feeling like it's forever, like it's for sure, like it's permanent, like it's the cure, like it's not ever against each other. It's always, we'll face it, whatever, together. There's always the feeling of we. Much grander than you versus me.
Even if you don't know how you'll get through this together, you can say with faith, I don't know how we're going to get through this, but I know that together we'll do better than apart. We're a team. This is a marriage. Whatever we do, wherever we go, we do it together. And when one of us is hurt and upset and pulls away, we will be not the one that's hurt and pulling away so much as the true self that responds to that and replaces the separateness, the alienation or sense of abandonment with a response to step into what initially you had pulled away from as if hurt or surprised or endangered. Feel yourself doing that now in a situation where you're confused. There's a real significant disagreement, a lot of hurt feelings. You're both pulling away, and you remember, you reorient, and you take that responsibility, that ability to choose your response, and breathe and relax and feel safe, and remember that romance is more spiritual than emotional. And together you're more than two. There's a synergy here where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. As long as we remember to view our problems from the elevated perspective of the true self, feeling safe and relaxed in these levels of mind, having in a sense turned away from physical sense and sensation, from the turmoil and chaos of the world around you, to the peace, the tranquility, and the safety of this inner world. Where you reorient yourself and recommit yourself to fostering and maintaining love by moving into the committed relationship that for a moment you felt yourself pulling away from.
There is a theory that in the physical world, when you give, that you have less, but clearly when it comes to romance, when you give, you feel more blessed. So give romantic feelings a chance to grow inside your heart and feel like it brings you closer together, like you'll never be apart. Feel that romance building, and I think that you'll find that not only do you have the feelings in your heart, that the thoughts come into your mind. The thoughts like, what can I do to make them happy? What can I do to help make life easy? What can I do to enjoy being this team? Feel the feelings of being romantic, and your mind will interpret ways to create what that means. So, with that feeling of romance, the seed now planted, growing in your heart, the feeling that that seed's going to grow, and you're going to grow closer and closer, never apart. No matter what the distance, there's always the feeling that we're together, that we're in us, that we are blessed, that we are a one, that we have love, respect, and trust. And with that feeling growing, take a deep breath, and as it feels comfortable for you, bring yourself back to wide awake.
And so it's a practice. I always get a kick out of the back of the shampoo bottle. It says lather, rinse, repeat. I think that's a marketing ploy.
Must be, although I've always done it twice, all my life, I have to admit.
Have you really?
I do, yeah, and I don't have hardly any hair, but I put some on, and I rub my scalp, and then I put more on to do the again. I don't know, I always do that. I follow it along. My brother makes fun of me for that. He's got a lot of hair.
Well, these are skills. This is a level of consciousness that you can develop and get better and better at remembering to be conscious, at remembering that you're committed to your spouse in a relationship built out of capital L love that includes trust and respect, and the responsibility for taking ownership of our feelings. We are, in fact, responsible for our impact on other people, but that is secondary to the responsibility we have to take ownership of what we feel, even if done to us, even if you feel like a victim. Those are your feelings. They come out of you in response to the stimulus and say so much about you. And to take that into relationship, to work together with what each of you are discovering about the self, and then sharing that, that's a high quality of romance. Practice that.
Indeed. And, we're talking about sending your friends the kinds of programs they need to hear, and let your spouse and you share some of these programs together. I think you'll find that a very romantic thing to do as well. One of my favorites is to sit down with my wife and to listen to podcasts that are about higher self. I mean, we have conversations about it, and it leads to all kinds of neat things. So it's a fun thing to do.
I saw a Valentine card this week with a quote I'd never seen before from Mother Teresa. And I really like it. I want to share it with you. It said, "I have discovered the paradox that when I love till it hurts, it stops hurting."
I like that.
I do too. So happy Valentine's Day. Whatever is the time that you hear this program. And thanks for being with us.
And remember, there's no way to love. Love is the way.
What's more important than your personal success? Helping people in your family, your friends, people you love and care about become more and more successful. We've got a variety of personal development and personal empowerment programs here, but we don't know the people you do. So help us find the people looking for us in this material at focusedpassion.com. Join us next week, and as always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha.